Hey, hey, Judy.
Lisa, how's everything going?
Good.
Good. You sound so bright and clear.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you from
I
me.
hopefully I will, last week's sound was not the best. You were
Okay.
nice and bright and shiny and crisp, and I sounded like I was way far away and very hard to hear. So I'm hoping with my new blue Yeti Merry Christmas microphone that we are more on an equal footing, right?
Well, you sound good to me. So, I think you'll have to tell me when you do the posting if when you what put it online, make it live, how it sounds.
Okay. Okay. Sounds like a plan. So,
Good.
as we told our listeners, this week we are talking about vintage self-help books or
Yes.
a vintage self-help book, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I-
So, here is my copy right here. If you are one of our watchers on YouTube, it is called Your Erroneous Zones.
yes.
This is an authentic, not one of a kind, editions that was purchased by you for my mother back in December of 1977.
That's
And you
exactly right.
have a wonderful notation, as you
Uh-huh.
so often do in your books to us. You do a
Uh-huh.
little love letter at the beginning of it, which I'm showing once again.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to read it because it was
Okay.
this book was published in 1976, and you purchased it for my mother at Christmas 1977.
So it was pretty
And
current then.
it was. And I think, the sentiment, this sounds just like you. Just like you. You said, "Dear Sandy, there isn't very often a book that I enjoy enough or believe in enough to recommend it to other people. But this book is one of those. As my best friend, number one confidant, and last but certainly not least, my sister, I'm looking forward to talking with you about the book and what some of its ideas could mean for us. Please read it with an open mind. Try to clear your head of negative thoughts and give old Dr. Dyer a chance. He has some fantastic, exciting ideas. Some of them are so basic. I found myself being totally surprised that I hadn't thought of them myself. Let me
Uh-huh.
know what you think. I'm looking forward to sharing this with you. Love always, Judy." So, and you don't know. Well, you do know because we talked about this before I hit the play button or press the record button. I don't think my mom ever read this book.
I don't think she cracked a page.
Mm-mm.
And
No, because when I opened it, so I like to crack the pages. When
mhm,
I cracked it, what happened was the
the
page
pages
fell
fell
off.
out.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's
I
too
guess
bad.
I suppose it had to be pre-cracked. So since this book is almost 50 years old, um,
Wow.
40,
Don't do that. It makes me feel
47 years
old.
old. Yeah, all the pages are falling out of it. It would have been nice if she had
I was
pre-cracked it.
28 years old and she was
30.
34 years old when I gave her the book. And
So,
she Yep.
I mean, as you said, it has great ideas. And what is so fascinating is that as I read this book, they weren't like, oh my God, this is such an unheard of, unthought of
Yeah.
concept.
Right.
These are
Right.
concepts that were like, duh, to you back then. And
Yeah,
they're like,
exactly.
yeah, to many people now. They are
Doesn't
con-
everybody know this stuff, right?
concepts that we continue to struggle with. They are concepts that are so simple that we literally could have written the book ourselves. And
Yes. I
people continue to rewrite this book over and over and over again using their own thoughts and their own words.
There truly is nothing new in the universe. It's just presented in a
Mhm.
little bit different languaging, the current language of the day kind of thing. And I know my original book is the a different cover, and I think it had a red cover and it had his picture and it said Erroneous
No, it was
Zones.
a blue cover. Blue background. Didn't have a blue background?
I think I can't remember. But anyway, I searched this house from top to bottom. And anyone who knows me well knows that in a tornado, my house is safe because the books are holding it in place. They're so heavy. I have so many of them. I wonder, and I've moved 17 times in my life. So I wonder how many times I've moved these books. But anyway, I couldn't find it. So I got frustrated and got tired of looking for it and didn't want to go through any more boxes. So I downloaded it on my Kindle, so I'm not quite as quick to move around on it, but I started reading it. Is my reason. I decided I wanted to reread it before we had our discussion today.
Exactly.
And I'm reading it and I'm going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. You know, these thoughts are so ingrained in our psyche today. You know, they talk about that your feelings control your thoughts, which control your actions, which control your outcomes. And I thought,
Determine your results. Yes.
where have I heard that before? I mean, I've heard it from Brooke Castillo. I've heard it from my personal coach. I've heard it from every motivational speaker. I mean, Tony Robbins talks about it all the time. But now Tony Robbins was actually mentored by Wayne Dyer. And then there's Mary Morrissey, who I just love. And she was in a group of 3 people that were mentored by James Rowan, who is somebody else I love. And it's kind of like, wow, you know, so this has been around for a while. And
Well, it's these concepts that deal with everything from what we're going to be talking about today, guilt and worry and procrastination. It talks about the need for other people's approval, breaking free from the past, breaking down barriers like being worried about justice and dependence versus independence, anger, all of these really heavy concepts that it's part of the human experience. And so I think as we move through different phases of our lives, these come up in different nuanced ways.
Well, and it's cute because I watched a couple of his videos. He's now passed away. He died at 74 of a massive heart attack. But I was watching a few of his videos and it cracked me up because I've teased about this with you guys a lot. He says when he first wrote the book and he started telling his friends about it, he said, what's the title? They said, and he said, well, it's called Erroneous Zones. And he said, he thinks the only reason people bought the book was they thought it was erogenous zones and it was all about sex. So, and he has jokes like that throughout the book, like he's a balding person and he talks about he didn't pay for haircuts, but he paid finder's fees. And, it's just, he had a great sense of humor and an extremely peaceful demeanor and was just somebody who, for some reason, these things came to him probably a little earlier than they came to the rest of us. And it was so refreshing because the erroneous zones, what he's saying there is these are the errors in our thinking. These are choices we're making that we don't need to make. We can choose happiness. We don't have to choose unhappiness. And then he gives us tips for how to put that into place. And it was like, no one had ever suggested those things to me before. And I just hung on every word because it was so refreshing. And we'll get into it in a minute, but the chapter on guilt and worry, as you know, they tease us about good old-fashioned Midwestern guilt because we're very good at using guilt to try to motivate our children and our spouses and our people. And maybe not so much now. I don't know. I think it's still alive and well personally, but I think that some of us have caught on, that maybe that's not the way to take care of things. So
yeah, what you said before about the book talks so much in the introduction about the cycle of how our thoughts are in our control. one of the
Correct.
things he does in the introduction of this book, it gives some examples, and it's one of the things that I have tagged right here in my book.
Uh-huh.
It says, you have grown up in a culture in which has taught you that you are not responsible for your feelings, even though the syllogistic truth is that you always were. And then it gets into a few examples, such as, you hurt my feelings. You make me feel bad. I can't help the way I feel. I just feel angry. Don't ask me to explain it. He makes me sick. Heights scare me. You're embarrassing me. She really turns me on. You made a fool of me in public. You know, all of these things sound so reasonable, you know?
Commonplace. We've all heard them.
We've all heard them. We've all said one of them at one time or another in some way, shape, or form, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And and nobody has called us on it. Nobody's said, that's not the way it works. We've all been, yeah, I
Well,
know what
except
you mean.
Eleanor Roosevelt. She's the only one who said no one can make you feel inferior without your
Your
permission.
permission.
So yeah,
Mhm,
the
mhm,
the um the other thing he did to really make his point, if you enjoyed that intro, he wrote another book called Gifts from Ikes, and it was a fable.
mm,
It was about an alien that came to this world, and he was, I don't exactly remember, but he was like touring her around to see what was in this was in this world and all that. And people were saying things like, "Oh, I'm afraid of elevators," and um, um, the taste of that makes me sick, and he would say all those things, and she took everything literally. And so the
mhm,
fable was about her literal processing of all of these comments like the ones you just read. It's hysterical. It's a really little book, but it's hysterical. So if you
mm.
ever want to have a good laugh, pick up Gifts from Ikes, and I would have to shoot myself to spell it, but it's Ikes, like Eykis, something like that. And I think Ikes was, I think it might have been her name, either that or it was the planet she came from. But anyway, not important. But it's so true that, if we really, really took those things literally,
Mhm, mhm.
we'd have to think again because they just don't work that way, right?
Mm-mm. Exactly, exactly. And the other thing that I thought of, I just what is it, a year and a half ago, got my life coach certification.
Mm-hmm.
And several people, many people, has said, this is nothing new. This is what's called cognitive behavior therapy
Mm-hmm.
used as life coaching. Now, I am not a trained therapist, but I'm a trained life coach.
Mm-hmm.
And the strategy that I was trained in was walking people through a process of recognizing that there is a circumstance. When
Mm-hmm.
you experience something in a circumstance, you think something about it, which then causes you to feel something. That feeling causes you to act in a certain way, do
Mm-hmm.
certain things, or not do certain things, which then lead to a predictable result.
Mm-hmm.
And walking by listening to people and asking probing questions, you can walk people through
Those
those steps
steps. Mm-hmm.
and really help them make other choices that will
Mm-hmm.
lead them to have other results than they are currently getting with their
Mm-hmm.
current thoughts that they're thinking. And this book talks exactly about that. And it's like, oh my goodness, here is another one that talks about choosing your thoughts. And every chapter, what I found is filled. I mean, the chapter that I liked is filled with bullet points
Mm-hmm.
about new ways to think,
Mm-hmm.
new ways to think about worry, new ways to think about guilt, new ways to
Mm-hmm.
think about procrastination. And those new ways of thinking are going to cause you to feel something and then do or not do, and then come up with a new result. And it was like, yep.
Yep, been there, heard that before. And you know what's so magical about it is it works.
It
It
does. It
works.
does. Yes.
I remember there was something that I read written by him where he told this woman said to him, "Well, I can't help the way I think." And he said to her, "Well, okay, then you bring me the person who is thinking for you, and I will talk to them, and maybe they can change your mind." In other words, if it's not you thinking your own thoughts, then I want to talk to who is thinking your thoughts. And of course, that's so ridiculous as to be kind of silly. But that was his point,
Yep.
and to say you can't help how you think. I think that was a very common belief back in the day. When I was growing up,
Mhm,
it
mhm.
was.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting how we've learned so much about the power of the mindset and the power of the choices we make
Yeah.
and the fact that we have choices. I think so often we just thought that it was out of our control. It was just who we were, and that was
Mhm.
just too bad. It wasn't going to get any better unless we were just real lucky.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
and, you know, no unless you seek out help in this area, I think the fallback, the easy way to think is to just kinda go with the flow and not do the work necessary to
Exact.
sit back and analyze your thoughts.
Hmm.
Because I think we've talked for how many? 153 episodes about or 154 episodes about sitting down and getting in touch, whether you're doing meditation, whether you're just, you know, honoring silence, or whether you're journaling. There are lots of different ways to get in
Yes,
touch with your thoughts and not just be dragged along hither and thither by whatever your brain comes up with, because your brain is going to want to take the easy way out.
sure.
It's going to want to relinquish responsibility and save energy, stay in the rut,
Well, it's become
just
a habitual tool, and you can let it keep on with its bad habits, or you can take charge and say, "No, that isn't the way I'm going to handle this situation."
Mhm.
Up until now, he says up until now about 100 times in this book. Up until now, I love that phrase because it's so perfect. I am guilty of everything I've done. I can't deny any of them up until now. But awareness is the first step in change. And once you are aware of what you've been doing that's actually been rather harmful to you, that gives you the power to choose to do something different.
Mhm.
And I think that's what I loved about this book when I was 20 some years old was I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that I had control of it, that I was the captain of my ship, that I really didn't have to care about how other people thought about me.
Hmm.
And he does make a caveat several times where he says, you can do anything you want to do except making sure you're not violating other people.
Mm.
And he
Mm.
is very
Mm.
clear that yes, you have the right to do what you need to do. You don't have the right to hurt people or to
Mhm,
put
mhm.
them in a bad situation or like that. um there's just so much to the book. What did you find other things in the introduction that you liked?
Well, my brain, I let my brain really kind of float with the first introduction. And
Uh-huh.
as I was reading it, I would come across different things and think to myself, you read this at 28.
Mm-hmm.
And and I wondered, you've heard that a human's brain isn't fully an adult until the age of about 26.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, is it even possible for somebody younger to really understand these concepts?
And
I
to
think they
assimilate it,
can.
to be able to make it their own.
Yeah, yeah, because I am able to really, viscerally remember back to when I was about 19, 20 years old. I was at a Christian, um, leadership training conference out in Washington, D.C. for a summer. And
Okay.
one of the things that they had us do was to write down life goals that we wanted to achieve in the next 10 years. So
Okay.
that would have put me at about the age of 30.
Uh-huh.
And, when I sat there looking or thinking about that list, I had no idea what I
You didn't have a
wanted to
clue,
do,
did you?
who I
Yeah.
wanted to be. And so what I resorted to is I kind of looked at what is the right answer, and that was one of the main reasons why I really liked this particular organization that I was involved in. They had the answers, and
Hmm.
if I bought into their structure, I was pursuing the right answers. And so that the problems that came up in my life always had a right way to respond and a wrong way to respond.
Sure.
And that was very liberating
Refreshing.
because
Yeah.
I was not then responsible. I could rely on my elders, my leadership, my husband to decide for me.
Mhm.
And I had always dealt with such anxiety about what I wanted to do and be when I grew up. It
I know.
felt really it
Oh.
just took such a weight off my shoulders. And so
Hmm.
what I did on that piece of paper is I kind of thought, what have I been taught
Hmm.
that I should want as a woman who was engaged to be married? What should I want in the next 10 years to be my lot in life?
Well, you said you wanted a dozen children.
13.
13 children, excuse
A
me.
baker's dozen, right?
I missed one. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and
Mhm.
you were very fortunate. I was very fortunate to find this book. You were very fortunate to find this group that was a healthy group. So often people at those young ages find groups that aren't healthy. And when they utilize what they think, it isn't a good thing. So, I just thank our lucky stars that we each had positive resources to
Mm.
go to help us through what we were
Mm.
doing. I mean, I still made one boatload of mistakes, probably many more than
Oh.
you did, but I'm not counting anymore. I mean, they'd sink the ship if I did. But the reality of it is, always in the back of my mind, I had so many of these thoughts. And what I find, and what I really enjoyed about rereading this book, is it's very easy to slip back to
Mm.
those old
Mm.
thoughts and feelings. It's thoughts first and then feelings, right?
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
To slip back into those old thoughts, which then you start having those feelings that are not leading to positive things. So,
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
if I could find my original copy of this book, it was highlighted to death. I mean, the poor thing. I think I went through 3 highlighters when I read it the first time because it was just so insightful to me,
Mhm,
and I say,
mhm.
"Oh, I don't wanna forget this. Oh, this is so good. Oh, I love this," and I thought, "I'll share it with my sister," and was such a crack up as Sandy is an avid reader of fiction.
Yes, yes.
She is
Mhm,
really creative. She has a very creative
mhm.
mind. She is not a reader of nonfiction.
Not at all.
And
Not at all.
self-improvement, if she went into a bookstore, would not be her first genre.
Mm-mm,
It's just
mm-mm.
not where she heads, and that's fine.
Yep.
That's fine. But I laughed because in that introduction that I wrote to her, or what should I say, the message, I said, "Oh, I'm so looking forward to having a discussion with you about this." And
You didn't
we
know it
did.
would take 47 years and you'd be talking to the little girl who was how old was it? I would have been in 6th, 7th grade, so
Sure.
I was
Yeah.
13 years old or
Well, I never
about-ish.
talked to the mom, but I've talked to the daughter, and the daughter and I are on the very same page. It's
Mhm,
really interesting.
yeah,
I mean, what did I figure? We're about 15 years apart, I
yeah,
think, if I'm not mistaken.
around there.
So, yeah, it's just so interesting.
So
Uh,
when we were talking, okay, let's move forward. We've been in the introduction and we both loved the introduction and had such connections with it. But we
exactly.
definitely picked different chapters in terms of our own personalities, what we felt we would find the most useful stuff. You
Exactly.
found the chapter 5 about guilt and
Chapter
worry.
5. Hmm.
Mhm. Why did you
Um,
like that chapter so much?
well, I think that I am a one-time parent. I have one child, and I realized when I reread this that there were some things that I was doing that I was trying to help him along the path, okay? But I was using manipulation, using guilt. And I thought, Judy, you know better than that.
Mm.
He has no reason to be guilty. There is nothing wrong with going back and looking at your past for the lessons you can learn.
Mhm.
But there is
Mhm.
everything
Mhm.
limiting about looking at the past and feeling guilty about it. There's no way to change it. It's over and done with. It's water under the
Mhm.
bridge. It's
Mhm.
water over the dam, whatever you want to say. So the reality of it is that
How many
guilt,
metaphors can we get in here? Yeah.
exactly. The guilt is an absolutely wasted emotion. So move on,
Yeah.
take the few lessons you have from your past and move forward. Today is the present. And he does talk in these chapters about how few people are really able to live in the present moment.
Mm.
Because if they have stopped being guilty, the next thing they do, which was something I was doing, my son lives in Milwaukee. Milwaukee, well, Wauwatosa, a little safer than mainstream Milwaukee, but it's, if you go downtown, you still got some stuff to deal with. And I was, definitely spending way too much of my present moments worrying about him.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, what I realized, I actually thought about this last night as I was thinking about doing our podcast today. And I thought, this is a person who was raised with the right stuff.
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
was brought up in a good family. He is extremely bright. He's a college graduate. He's doing work that he enjoys. He has his days, but
Mhm.
he has
Mhm.
work that he enjoys.
Mhm.
He has good values. So for me to waste my time
Yeah.
worrying
Yeah.
about him
Yeah.
absolutely makes no sense at all, because that is present time that I could be using to take care of what I need to be doing
Mhm.
and the things
Mhm.
that I
Mhm.
wish to accomplish and so on. And I made a decision. And I called him at 6 o'clock this morning because I know he always has trouble sleeping past about 5:30. And darn it, he wasn't awake.
Oh.
So I I asked him to call me back, and I had a conversation with him, and I said, as of today, I'm done laying guilt on you to get you to do what I want you to do, because you are far and above able to make your own
Mhm.
choices. And we've
You're a
talked.
grown ass man, for God's sakes.
Well,
Let me
he
off the hook
is.
and do my own life, and you do your own life, says me.
Exactly. Yeah, you do you and I'll do me and we'll both be happier. And I said, I'm also
Not that he
done.
instigated this or had any idea that you were evaluating your place in his life in this way. This was all on you, right?
Oh, it's all on me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, let me just see something real quick. I'll just tell you just one little thing about the message that I sent him this morning. And I thought it was so telling about, okay, I said, just a reminder, I'm always here for you if you need to talk. I love you more than words can say. I know how smart you are. I know you can handle yourself. And then I said, the good stuff is more fun to handle. Enough. That's enough said. And
Done.
and and yeah, exactly. So it was just one of those things that, you talk about reading this book being freeing. That was a very freeing thing for
Yeah.
me. I have
Yeah.
no more need to lay guilt on him or to sit and worry about him. I got things to do, And so
Things
I
to
have.
do, places to go, people to see.
You got it. I love this. There's a little scenario in the book in the chapter on guilt about a parent manipulating a child to complete a task. And it
Oh.
says, Donnie, bring up the chairs from the basement. We'll be eating soon. Child says, okay, mom, in a minute. I'm watching the ball game and I'll do it when this inning is over. The parent says, never mind then. I'll do it with my bad back. You just sit there and enjoy yourself. And Donnie has visions of his mother falling down with 6 chairs landing on top of her, and he's responsible. The I sacrificed for you mentality is an exceedingly effective guilt producer. And, frankly, how silly. I mean, there was no reason that he had to drop everything and do it
Mhm.
now.
Well, what that makes me think of is, kind of moving into another chapter that I just happened. I'm somebody who likes breaks in the words. Like I said, this book is filled with bullet points. But as I was flipping through, I found this great circle in the chapter called "Breaking Free from the Past," and okay, two different things. First of all, let me talk about your example right there that you just did with Donnie and the chairs.
Okay.
I was at the post office today, and while I was waiting in line, the woman ahead of me went up to the counter and said
Okay.
to the woman, "I need to get 2 books of stamps, please." And
Mhm.
the woman said, "Sure." Then the woman said, she looked at the placemat right there at the counter and said,
Uh-huh.
"Do you have all of these available?" And the woman was opening up the drawer and she said, "No, but I'll take out all the ones we have." And then she proceeded to bring out several. I didn't see how many she brought out. And the woman picked the ones she wanted. As she's paying, the cashier, the woman on the other side of the desk said, "Do you want anything else?" And the woman who was paying, who had picked out the books of stamps she wanted, said, pretty much a quote here, "No, I'll just take these 2, if that's all you have." And
Guilt,
I thought to
guilt,
myself,
guilt.
how passive aggressive. I mean, I was like,
Mhm.
obviously, girlfriend, she
That's what she
said,
had.
"We don't have all of these. I will take out the ones we do have for you to pick from." And I'm like, did she need to say that last part? Did that make her feel good? Did that, was she trying to punish the person who was working for the post office? I mean, what was the goal here?
What was the motive, right?
What was
What
the
was the
motive?
motive? Yep.
The result was that, yeah, she brought she added some negativity to this world that is already, we got enough of it, girl. We don't need
Mhm.
any more, but
And what
she added
else could
to it.
she have said? She could have said, "Why, thank you so much for showing me what's available. I appreciate
"I'll
it.
take those 2, please.
Yeah. Have a
Appreciate your
nice
help."
day. Thank you very
Mhm.
much." Whatever.
Yeah.
It's just, and the guilt thing, we get the guilt card played against us in retail like that, at church, that's a common one. In school sometimes, depending
Mhm,
on the
mhm.
teacher.
And in
Um,
families. I think in
mhm.
families a lot.
Oh,
There are
families, ton.
expectations. Mhm,
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 mhm.
definitely.
Well, and I hate to say it because I absolutely will by choice not want to live anywhere but Wisconsin.
In the
But when I
Midwest.
moved around the country, yeah, when I moved around the country, people would also say, "Oh, good old-fashioned Midwestern guilt." And I don't know what it is, if it's our upbringing or just what, but it is used a lot here.
I think so.
And yeah, and it is something that he brought up in the book too, was this constant thing that so many of us say about things. Instead of, you bring something to my attention and I say, "Oh, Lisa, I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to do that." Are you really sorry? Was it really your fault it happened? How many times a day do you apologize? "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're having to deal with that." I mean, people, I don't think, even hear "I'm sorry" anymore because
That's been something that I've given some thought to recently because I was at Walmart the other day and I saw an interaction between 2 people where a person just got out of somebody's way and they said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I thought to myself, why would they need to be sorry? They were in the aisle and the other person was in the aisle. And I thought, do I ever say I'm sorry?
I
And I
say it all the
thought, what
time.
would be a more appropriate word to say? And I thought, you know what the appropriate word to say would be, excuse me.
Excuse
It's as
me.
simple as that.
Or just let me get out of your way. Or, oh, I see you're trying to get the same place I am. I'll move. You can just say something kind of light, but
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I'm sorry is, I think that's the Midwestern guilt thing.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What are you sorry for? Being alive? Being in
For
Walmart?
being, yeah,
You
for
know,
grocery shopping on a Sunday. Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
don't do that. Walmart between 10:30 and like 1, zoo, zoo.
Only on Sundays?
I was well, I think that that has to be. It has to be their number one time to shop. It has to be because I
Okay.
was there yesterday between that time and I actually saw someone, and this was an older woman, and she was like, she said something very perturbed, like, why are all these people here or something like that. And the thought that went to my mind is like,
Why are
why
you
are you
here?
here? Yeah, it was like, who died and made you God? I was like,
Oh, I
they
know.
have as
I
much
know.
right to be here right now as you do. And if you're here, girlfriend, you're part of the problem. you know,
Exactly.
this is not helping that
Exactly.
you're shopping at the same time everybody else is shopping.
And
I thought,
usually a lot of your websites will tell you place is busy right now or it's not busy. So you have choices, and if
mhm,
you're like
mhm.
a retired person who doesn't have to be shopping on a
I think it's
Sunday,
the after church crowd is what happens. People are
I
out and about,
I think you're
and
right.
they think, oh, before we get home, let's just quick, do some grocery shopping.
And they just
Lots
have
of
to make
people think that.
a lot of people
Lots.
must go to church, Lisa.
I think they got their dose of Jesus and they're
Yeah,
like, okay, I'm good for the week now. And so they start rounding up, I don't know, reasons to go back to church next week again or something. Don't know.
I don't know. Or they want to just make one outing and then go back home.
Yes.
But we've talked a lot about guilt. The one thing I do want to mention before we move on, because I think you've got a good subject to talk about, is the other side of guilt, and that's worry.
Mm.
And Dr. Dyer actually states in his book that through his research, he has found that 95% of all of the things that we worry about never happen.
Anyway.
And if we took that time
That
to
energy.
do productive things, how much a better world it would be. And the reality of it
Mhm.
is, you can worry and worry and worry and worry, and there is no way that that worry does anything productive. It
No,
doesn't change
no,
anything from happening. So,
doesn't.
if you find yourself worrying, he talked about one man he knew who had this little um, way that he dealt with it. He would worry for 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night. And if he started to worry during the rest of the time, he'd say, "Oh, no, I can't do it now. I have to wait for my 10 minutes." And he said, after a bit of time, he stopped worrying. Yeah,
Oh,
there's all kinds of
yeah.
little things like that. Or, you can only worry one day a week, or there's, it's so ridiculous. But the reality of it is, he says, guilt and worry are two of the most useless emotions. Think of something else to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
I think it's very true, and I've worked hard to live that way, and the only time I've reverted was when I had my only child.
Mm.
And I think it triggered, perhaps my parental upbringing was triggered by, you know, what would mom and dad do? And
You
eh,
resorted to how you were raised
exactly. And
to a topic that was similar, and you felt like, ugh, you want to do the best you can, and
and it worked on me,
mhm,
so maybe it'll work on him.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I think it's one of those real conscious choices that I've had to make, and I had no trouble making it when it was
Mhm.
just me in charge of me.
Right.
But when I was contributing to the upbringing of this very important person in my life,
Yeah.
oh, right back I went. So it was really a blessing that I reread those chapters again, because I think it benefited him and I.
Yeah. Moving on to my chapter, I just want to touch on it real quick. The thing that I read was about procrastination. But
Okay.
was really interesting was I have done a lot of work on procrastination. And so all of the tips sounded very like, yeah, yeah, uh-huh. It was like what he said, the introduction. I could have written this book because they're
Uh-huh.
all things that I have used, not all of them, but many of them were strategies that I've tried at one time or another to accomplish many of the things that I have over the
Mhm.
last
Mhm.
years. But I do want to instead of talking about the procrastination chapter, I kind of want to stay on the flow of what you were talking about and move into another chapter called Breaking Free from the Past. I mentioned a
Okay.
second ago about blank
Yeah.
spaces in books and how much I am drawn to them. And I'll just show once again for the for the visual people, this is the diagram I'm going to be referring to right here. It is a
Okay.
circle. And I think so often this circle tells and represents what you and I have been talking about here. Once
Okay.
you start in a vein of thought, it's so easy to stay in that circle unless something stops it. So here's the example that Wayne Dyer uses. Number 1, I'm poor at math. I've always been that way. 2, here are the algebra problems I have to solve tonight. 3, I think I'll get them done. 4, I can't do this stuff. And then after 10 minutes, number 5, why not? Because I'm
I'm
poor at
not
math.
very
I've always been that way. Here and so rather than stopping between 3 and 4, which are I have to get this done and I can't do this stuff, instead of putting in some extra time either on the internet or with a tutor or just struggling, finding help on your phone with a friend, with a relative, pulling out your resources, it's easier to stay in that circle and just, I think we would have called it just give up. But it really is a circle that feeds itself. And once you get into that circle, if you don't do something like continually monitor yourself and think about what you want to achieve, how you're behaving, how you're thinking, how you're feeling, and what the results you're currently getting in your life, and that if those are the results you want to have or not,
then fine.
we stay in that circle. We just stay in that circle. And I think when you stay in that circle and you don't evaluate, you do stay in the past. And I think there are so many people that then over time become so that becomes such a rut that is so unhealthy
Mhm.
that it's almost impossible. I mean, is it impossible or is there just absolutely no even desire to get out of the rut?
What the subconscious believes, it will continue to bring forward in your behavior.
Hmm.
And if you have convinced your subconscious doesn't know if you tell the truth or not. It just knows what you believe and it
Yeah.
makes that happen. And that's talked about in this book as well. That and you said the perfect word I was going to interject, and the path of that circle becomes a deep rut. And it's very difficult to get out of that rut. But the reality of it
Mhm.
is that, this has been going on a little bit for me since I've been recently widowed. And things have
Yeah.
come up that my husband always took care of. And he was just real good at he was very good to me. And I'm thinking, I can't do
Mm.
this. I just can't do this. I've never done it. I can't do it. Well, you know what? I actually have had a couple of times to have a good talk with myself and say, you haven't up until now done it,
Mhm.
but girlfriend, figure it out. Either
Mhm,
that or
mhm.
you've got to find someone who's going to do it for you. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. So, I've actually been
Yeah.
figuring out quite a few things. And it actually, I said actually 3 times in that sentence, actually, it feels very good when you figure them out because
You're getting a real sense of accomplishment.
yeah, and you
Mhm,
know that you
mhm.
have the capabilities to do these things. I was just spoiled. I was very spoiled. There were just certain things I did not have to do.
Sure.
Well, say goodbye to that. That's not what's happening today. So I have to
Figure it out.
put away the blocks. And, we've
Mm.
been talking
Mhm.
about writer's block. Well,
Yep.
these are blocks to positive behavior in our lives. So
Yeah.
those blocks can be just as oppressive as our other kinds of blocks, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh
So
yeah.
figuring out what that block is and then working with it, and you said a tutor or a friend or a parent or a somebody,
Or a
you
niece.
know, yeah, yeah, exactly. My niece in the backyard who's so busy she can't get her own work
Or
done.
your niece on Zoom. Yeah.
And my niece
Niece.
on Zoom, yes, yes, this wonderful personal coach I have. It's just so interesting how life works. And
Mhm.
it's just so easy to say, I can't do it. I can't do it. I've never been good at it. I've never been good at art. I just went through this when we did our paintings at Christmas time.
Yeah.
Oh, I've never
Yeah.
been a good painter. And I thought, wait a minute. Yes, I
What
have.
am I saying?
I did a lot of good painting when I was in high school in my art class. I actually quit band to take art because I never had, and it went well.
Huh.
So it's just I'm out of
Wow.
practice. I'm really out of practice. That's all it is. So if I want to be a better little painter, paint more. Do it. Do
If
it.
that's
Do
what you
it.
want to do, you get to choose whether or not. Maybe that's not a top priority for you at this season in your life.
Right.
Maybe 5 years from now it will be, and that'll be fun
Exactly.
and interesting.
Yeah. But I'm not going to feel guilty about it.
No,
And
no.
I'm certainly not going to worry about it
Mm-mm.
because that would be a total waste of my time.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
it's interesting. I really recommend to anybody who's having issues with feelings that are not helping your peace of mind to pick up this book. I one time I had one of your children here and they were sick and I was the only one home. So I had him come here and he laid down and he was, looking for something to do. And he said, "Do you have any books for me to read?" And I said, "Well, yeah,
It was obviously Caden.
it was Caden." And I got out a bunch of my books and I brought them to him and he said, "Judy, these books are all old. Don't you have anything current?" And they were sports books and stuff that my son had had. And
Mhm,
I mean,
mhm.
Caden is how old? 19, and Matt's
Now he's 19 right now, yeah.
19, and Matt is 35. So there's almost a 20-year difference
There's a
there.
16-year difference.
16-year difference.
No, no, yeah, 16 years. Mhm.
Yeah. So the books that Matthew read would be considered, quote,
Old.
old now.
Yeah, yeah.
And I sat down on the bed and I said to him, "Have you ever heard of the classics?" And he said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, like Wuthering Heights and, "Oh, those are girls' books," he said. And it's kind of like that. It's like this book, in my opinion, is a classic.
Mhm,
And
yeah.
in rereading it, what it did was it cemented my feelings
Mm.
on some very, very valuable subjects. So
Yeah.
don't worry that it was done in 1976 and wasn't read in 1977. But give it a shot. Like I say, I brought it up
Well,
on Kindle.
I don't know that. I mean, when I read this, my book was falling apart. I guess what I would like to tell people is this is a great book. And there are other great books out there that cover the exact same topics. So I want people to know that the books that talk about, recognizing or exploring your feelings, change or thoughts, exploring your thoughts and then changing your thoughts so that you feel different things and you either do or don't do things and get different results. I want people to know not that they need to pick up this book, but that this is a philosophy, it's a concept that has deep roots. It's not
Mhm.
just flying by the wayside,
No,
a philosophy or thought.
it's not radical. It's
It's
not
not
radical at all.
radical. It's something that is deep in and there's been research done on it now, but it's
Science, practice, all of
mhm.
those things. Yep.
And I think I want people to know that. So, when we are talking about these concepts, it's not something that is going to be disproven, or we're not kind of out there on the cutting edge of what's happening in modern day positive psychology.
Hmm.
It's been something that's been talked about for some time. And for whatever reason, so many people still haven't heard it that need to hear it.
Well, and the new name for it is cognitive behavioral therapy. You know,
Yes.
it's cognitive just means you're thinking about it in the mind and you're understanding your mind a little better. And if you can do that and it helps you make greater choices, you know, what's the chaos theory? It says success is available to us. And by the slightest of changes in the way we think or do things, it can mean the difference between success and failure.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, people are even looking at failure and saying without several failures in your life you'll never succeed because you learn so much from those. So you know, there's so many good things to
And the
read
fear
and
of
study,
failure
and
will stop you from trying all the things that will ultimately bring you your success.
unless you have fear of success, and that's a real thing too for another time.
Exactly. Exactly. So with that, Judy, we have got to wrap things up. So we are going to be talking about a new book every month. We're
Okay,
not sure which one we're going to bring up next. So I don't think it's going to be as vintage as this one.
I think you get to pick the next one because this was
Okay.
my pick.
Oh, it's going to be
Okay.
hard because as we talked about at the was it, last week or the week before, I have got at least 10 that
Uh-huh.
I would love to go over with you and share with our audience because they just jazz me so much.
Well, and what I would say is the first place to start is look at those 10 and see how many of those I own too, because if we both have
Okay.
read them, it's a better conversation.
Oh, sure, sure. Well, I
Yeah,
think so many of them, if you haven't read them, I would definitely, the ones that I'm bringing up are current and I would recommend to everyone.
to
So
have them in their library.
yeah, yeah. So with
Sounds
that,
good.
Judy, let's wrap things up here. I've loved our conversation today. I'm so glad that we've kind of opened up our horizons here and are talking about all sorts of blocks and suggestions and
Ways to help yourself
things.
move forward, you know, in a
Mhm.
great way, you know,
Yes.
and it's more than just positive thinking. It's so much more.
Yeah. With that, what you say?
Thank you. Love
Okay,
you.
Judy. Love you too. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye bye.